Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. Bradley's mother, Narkis Golan, passed away 3 months ago. He is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to Italian social services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system where he can't speak or understand the language. He will be taken away from the only family he has ever known. Please call Governor Hochul at 518 474 8390 to voice your concerns to please keep Bradley here in the United States. That's 518 474 8390. Governor Hochul, hashtag keep Bradley safe. I have a brand new guest on. I have John Peace. He is a co-owner of Safe Haven Services, and they have been working with law enforcement and domestic violence prevention departments, and they have been working with domestic abuse and financial abuse victims. And I welcome you, John Peace, to my podcast to explain your business and how you help domestic abuse individuals. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, Marianne. I've listened to many of your podcasts now, and so it's a very privilege of me to be here today. Give you a little bit of background on Safe Haven Services. We're getting ready to launch live with all the services, hopefully this time next month. And we've been doing a lot of research with these groups, whether it be enforcement, domestic violence, financial abuse prevention units, and advocacy groups, a lot of nonprofits and stuff, and a little bit of it's been for pre-marketing and a lot of research. How do we? We had to spend a lot of research, and I'll get into exactly what Safe Haven does here in a second. But we had to do a lot of research of how do we market to these victims. It's not something that you just kind of buy Facebook ads for and just put a little ad on. So that kind of explains why we've been doing so much kind of pre-marketing for our services. Safe Haven Services, let me tell the audience exactly what it does. It's pretty simple. We just rent digital security boxes, just like you would go into a local bank and rent a physical deposit box. And what we can do is very much like the physical boxes. We can store your important documents, and also we can store small amounts of emergency monies. And a lot of digital security boxes, I think the FDIC, some of their research says people up to like 30% of the physical deposit boxes, people still store emergency monies in. Um, just to have for that emergency. Give you a little bit of my background, and this actually kind of goes into how I kind of came up with the idea of digital security boxes. I grew up on a family farm, family dairy farm, and I'm fifth generation on my mom's side of the family on farming, and I still live on the family farm today. And throughout rural America, banks have been closing in these small towns left and right. They close physical branches and stuff. So in a 3-year period, I had to move my mom and dad's safety security box stuff twice in 3 years due to the banks closing and stuff. So I came up with the idea of, hey, we have to be able to do a lot of this online digitally. So people in rural America can have that option when their local bank closes. Then, I was very fortunate, and I'm not a technical computer person. I was through a mutual friend, got in contact with an old alumni in high school. He was a couple years behind me, so I kind of knew my business partner, but I didn't really, keep up with him because we were a couple years apart. And his name's Tom, and he was, I mean, for lack of a better word, he is truly a computer genius. He was building building computers at home with Radio Shack parts in the late 80s, early 90s. I just aged myself with Radio Shack, but he was building home computers back before there was home computers.
I get
So,
it.
and
Same
he's,
here.
yes, and he's had a successful career in the technology industry. He's done real well. So we touched base through that mutual friend, and I pitched the idea, and he said, we can do this. We can
Mhm.
make this. It's a new service. So we've been working on it about, I think, almost 2.5 years. I think he just mentioned that he just had now gone over 10,000 lines of computer code and just developing the software.
Mhm.
And we hope to launch this time next month. And the first question I get asked, well, gosh, why would anybody want to rent a digital security box? Well, there's many reasons for it. The farmers have always used security boxes at the bank to keep emergency money. And then we started doing research on, well, what's a bigger market than just rural America? And we started doing research, and we got kind of led down the path of domestic violence victims and
Mhm.
financial abuse victims. And unfortunately, I'd had a little bit of experience with domestic violence advocacy groups, financial abuse advocacy groups, and I've been through family court. So, we started going down this rabbit hole of financial abuse, what it was,
Mhm.
who are these victims? And, financial abuse is when the abuser in the relationship controls the money.
Mhm.
They control the bank accounts, they control the spending, and then we started getting into doing more research with some of these groups that work with domestic violence and financial abuse victims. And, their own statistics said that 95 to 98% of victims stay in toxic relationships due to financial abuse.
Right.
They don't have the money to leave that relationship. Well, then, just a natural tie-in with our digital security boxes, because I'll explain to the audience exactly how they work. You go online, you will be able to go online, set up your digital security box just like you did your online banking. You do your login, do your password, do your security questions, and you can set up a digital security box with Safe Haven Services. And to be able to put documents in it, pretty much, this is nothing new there. People store documents in the cloud all the time. So you would upload that to your digital security box like you did. And, when we say important papers, we mean like, life insurance policies, copies of your social security cards, banking information and stuff, important documents. So if that domestic violence victim decides to leave, these are papers they need to restart their life somewhere else.
Mhm.
Now, the one feature we offer that's brand new, that is a new creation of ours, is you will be able to store small amounts of emergency cash, emergency money. You can upload that with a credit or debit card. You go in and it's just like making an Amazon purchase. You actually just make a payment into your box. And now here's where it becomes very important for domestic violence. In doing the research, so many of these victims, their abuser snoops on their records, snoops on, even if it's a personal bank account, they're controlling the mail. And so they'll look and see, well, gosh, where's that victim spending money? Well, one of the features of Safe Haven Services is we have what they call brown bag billing. So when you make that payment into your security box, it just shows up as a very benign, generic online merchant purchase. Doesn't show as a withdrawal, doesn't show as a cash advance. And that's very important. So if the abuser sees that on your statement, you can just explain it, well, it's just $20. It's something I bought online from a merchant.
Mhm.
So hopefully that victim can explain that away to the abuser. And so it's very discreet and very private, and compared to a bank account. And
Mhm.
another advantage, when we talk to these victim advocacies, one of the things was they used to talk about, and they still do, set up a secret bank account. Well, that sounds very easy till you actually start going through the steps. There's a couple things that we have advantage of over just bank accounts. Is one is we don't require a permanent physical address, and why that's important is because bank accounts will send mail to that address,
Mhm.
and they need that verification. Well, if the abuser is controlling the mail, then he's going to find out, hey, you got a secret bank account. And then, of course, the problems that arise from that.
Mhm.
Another advantage that we have is if you set up a bank account and don't tell your spouse about it, most bank accounts pay just a little bit of interest on that account, just enough to get a 1099 INT.
Mhm.
Well, if you file a joint tax return with your abuser and you do not report that. Now, granted, the IRS could care less about $2 worth of interest or $1.50 worth of interest, but that abuser's lawyer will definitely make a big issue in divorce court on how you hid that from them and you had their client sign a fraudulent IRS tax return. So it's a big deal in divorce court whether or not it'd be a big deal for the IRS.
Mhm.
So, so that's some of the advantages of victims looking at using our digital security boxes versus like a bank account.
Mhm.
The other option when we started looking, what these advocacy groups start, helping these victims collect money. One thing was they would say, "Well, gosh, you can go look at prepaid debit cards."
Mhm.
And if you don't have any experience with prepaid debit cards, they are very, very expensive. They'll charge some of them up to like 16 to 20% interest per charge. The leading debit card in America right now, they'll charge $2.50 just so you log in to look at your balance. So one thing our digital security boxes are, we're much, much cheaper than that. We have a simple, small transactional fee. That's all we charge. We don't charge you just to have money there. We
Mhm.
don't charge you just to look at your money, just to see what your balance is. So we're a much cheaper option than trying to use a prepaid debit card. And also we're not using a card. If that abuser finds that card,
Mhm.
first of all, he could just take your money, and then second, you're going to explain why you have it. So Safe Haven Services is completely web-based. That's another reason we didn't do a phone app, was for the same reason that abusers, and most chances are going to be controlling the phone.
Mhm.
And so that's a little bit of how Safe Haven works. Didn't know if you had any specific questions, Marianne.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. The abusers control the phone, they watch everything this person does, and it could be a man or a woman who's being abused.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of the research, we started interviewing victims and stuff, and the classical female victim is pretty much what everybody kind of out in the audience would probably know. The males is maybe very physical, just that, for lack of a better word, that typical alpha male, just controlling
Mhm.
through just sheer physical power and everything. But when we started doing research, and we interviewed some of the male victims, and you go, well, gosh, how's somebody that's 6'2", 250 pounds, how can he be a victim of domestic violence or financial abuse? In those cases, most of the time, the men talked about, well, they were controlled because of the threat of losing their children,
Mhm.
if there was children involved. Had this one gentleman who we interviewed, and he said, yeah, he said, if I even question money or question about where my money was going to, that came from my paycheck, the first thing he said was my spouse would just blow up and threaten to divorce me and, take my son or daughter away, and they'd have a new daddy within a year. And
Mhm.
or the threat of moving them as far away as they could physically. So that was a little bit how the males seem to be trapped more so than the females.
Mhm.
And statistically, I think national um, groups talk about, it's about an 80-20 split. 80% of the victims are women, about 20% are men nationally.
Mhm. It's, and I think it could even be more of men because a lot of them aren't even coming forward.
Absolutely. One of the therapists we talked to thought that the number might be a lot greater, just due to the stigma of, that same guy that was 6'2", 250 pounds. He's not going to tell, he probably even his own therapist, that he was a victim of domestic violence, financial abuse, just due to, just the stigma of, how are you letting this happen? Had one guy talked about, he said the first, he actually told a buddy of his about it. And the first thing his buddy said, well, why don't you put your foot down and
Mhm.
stop that? Well, that's easy to say, but when you got small children at home, and the threat of them being, took away, and also the men were scared to death if they had a spouse that would accuse them of terrible things with their children.
Mhm.
And depend on your job, if it's out in the public, just the accusation saying, hey, you're abusing your children, could ruin your life and your career,
Mhm.
even if it's not true. and,
Right.
and you're trying to defend yourself. It's unfortunately in those cases you're presumed guilty, and you have to prove yourself innocent.
Mhm.
And of course that work, your experiences in family court
Yeah,
was the
I
same thing.
I totally get.
False accusations.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. And, it's a shame that, you marry someone and you think you can trust them, but however, 3 years later or 5 or 8 years later, they can change. I mean,
Mhm.
you just don't know really who you're marrying and can it last? Can you stay together? And I've always told people to get joint bank accounts. And even when
Mhm.
I remarried, I just told him I want a joint. I'll have my money, you have your money. Let's not mix monies.
Oh, actually, you want a separate accounts, right?
Right.
Separate. Yeah.
Yes. And our marriage has lasted now 11 years. So I know,
Mhm.
we'll be together till we drop dead. However, there are those people that are unfortunately getting, abused, verbal, physical, and verbal abuse is the same thing as being hit. And a lot of people don't
Mhm.
realize that. And, when you talk about your business, has anyone said, "Well, gee, this could be a fraud scam. How do we know this is not a fraud scam?"
Well, glad you asked your question. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we see the Bernie Madoffs, all the scandals with financial stuff. Couple things we've done. First of all, like our LinkedIn page, I didn't separate it from my personal page. So you actually know one of the owners, you know who we are, you know our background. And second, it'll be on our webpage. We're fully insured, bonded, and also to know that since we take like debit and credit cards, we're fully done the legal review and stuff to take Mastercard and Visa. In fact, in this startup process, we spent the largest amount of money we spent was actually doing the legal review, making sure we're legal, making sure we can operate in all 50 states.
Mhm,
So putting that up out front. And then also, we urge the customer, hey, don't put a lot of money in there. Just try it out. If you have some, second thoughts, put $10, $20 in there, pull it back out. Just see how the system works. And that'd be one thing I would recommend people to say, to do in
mhm,
looking at our service.
mhm. It sounds great. How does, like, the IRS if person deposits, over time, we'll say $500, and
Mhm.
how does the IRS watch this, or how does that work?
No, it's just like the your money that you would put in your physical safety deposit box. It's your money. You're just putting it in. We're not paying any interest or anything, so there's
Mhm,
no worry about the IRS as far as any kind of tax return, tax liability. Also, I had one therapist talk about how they were working with domestic violence victims, and she had to keep reiterating to them, "Hey, y'all are married. This is as much your money as his money."
mhm,
And to be able to, you have the right to squirrel away some of your money for
mhm,
your benefit. And that's a hard thing for some people to realize. I had and I'll bring this up. I was interviewing, and she was a religious therapist, and she goes, well, you're just kind of, your service is kind of promoting financial infidelity. And
mhm,
it kind of caught me off guard. I never really thought about it. And then all of a sudden, I was thinking, hey, wait a second. I'm not going to bow down to this, because one thing the research shows, these abusers already have secret bank accounts. These
ah,
abusers are already squirreling away money. And these people that's ever been in this situation, they already know this. And the abusers already controlling the money. So the only thing that Safe Haven Services is doing is offering a tool to try to level the playing field, so the victims can actually have some money of their own and start planning their escape. And one of our kind of mottos is, the only thing we want Safe Haven Services to do is just help victims, you know, um, escape sooner, escape safer, and just have a better outcome. Listening to your podcast, you know, gosh, some of the experiences that the people's had in family court were just horrendous.
mhm,
And some of them I've listened to, and the first thing I think is, gosh, if I wish you would have had a better lawyer. Now, just have, in rural America, and I'm sure the same way with urban America, having there's such a difference in having a lawyer and having a great lawyer. And great lawyers aren't cheap. Let's just be honest.
Mhm.
And having a great lawyer, I'm not going to say that you're just going to win your case, and nobody's going to, no great lawyer can promise you that. But I'll guarantee you one thing: if you can hire a great lawyer, your case you will fare much better in family court.
Mhm.
And I couldn't imagine being a victim and just going to family court broke, and even
Mhm.
having to do it yourself, or just doing it with whatever lawyer you can afford. And that's what we hope at Safe Haven Services offers, a self-help tool so people can accumulate that escape fund, so
Mhm.
when they do leave that toxic relationship, is they actually have some money to restart their life. And probably one of the first things they're going to spend money on is hiring a good lawyer for family court, divorce court, what it might be.
Right, and I'm gonna have to just throw this in, but when you go to hire an attorney and you are in a city, hire an attorney that does not work in your city. You're gonna have to go
Yes.
out of your county, find one there that does not drink out of the same watering hole, go golfing, and hang out at the bar with the other attorneys and lawyers. I'm gonna just throw that out
Y-
there.
Oh, absolutely. And I tell you, in this process of doing the research for Safe Haven Services, um, pretty much accidentally stumbled across this little. Well, I would call it a cottage industry, but it's probably grown much bigger than that now. Is the certified divorce coaches. And I'll
Mhm.
be honest with you, 2 years ago, I had never even heard that term and didn't even know what a certified divorce coach was. And basically what they are is you hire them and they help coach. And this is very simplistic on my part. And I hope you maybe interview a certified
Oh.
divorce coach in the
Mhm.
future, because they deserve some props, because
Oh,
they
yes.
help do the dirty work of the
Mhm.
divorce. They help coach you, they help you gather resources, and they do a lot of the things that lawyers, if they're not, if they don't want to do, they're unable to do because of lack of time. And I don't want just badmouth lawyers. There's great ones out there,
Mhm.
but they're limited on their time,
Right.
and they get paid to get you divorced,
Mhm.
but certified divorce coaches get paid to help you come out better in the divorce. And it's been a wonderful industry to find out about. Probably certified divorce coaches was one of the first groups of people that actually, looked at Safe Haven Services. I kind of explained to them what we were going to do, and they jumped. It was amazing how they kind of jumped on board and go, "No, this is a much needed service. We fight this all the time. These people get in these toxic relationships, and they have to leave with nothing but the shirt on their back
Mhm.
and their kids, and they have no money, and they don't have and some of them don't even have access to their own checking accounts and bank accounts from
Mhm.
the marriage."
Yeah, I agree with you. I have interviewed some, divorce coaches, and I mean, people need help. In fact, I was kind of in that position with the financial abuse.
Mhm.
You'd buy something, have to hide it in the trunk, wait for him to go to work, then bring it in, even though you got it on sale and there was an extra 70% off. Some
Mhm.
of these people are so, tight with their money and not letting their partner buy something that, could be $10, and they find that upsetting. And
Yes.
and I think E there were and I think people know, as I said before, the cracks can start showing in a marriage within, 3 years
Mhm.
and or 4 years. It could be a roller coaster of, "Oh, he or she is doing great. Okay, I'll stay in." And then there'll be another, problem, and it gets smoothed over, and this is kind of
Mhm.
insidious how this happens, and then you get to the point where you get so fed up, it's time to go, and
Mhm.
I think this would be a great service I wish I would have known. I mean, I wish this service was available when I was going through this,
Mhm.
it just would have been great.
Yeah, I was talking to one former financial abuse victim, and she had escaped her toxic relationship. Gosh, I guess approximately, maybe it was about 6 years ago. Doesn't really matter on the time, but it was quite a while ago. And she was talking about, and she came from a high income family. Her
Mhm,
s- her abuser, her partner, made a lot of money. And another thing, the research, and I never even had comprehended, the more money that's coming into the family, the more financial abuse can be, that that physical factor, of leaving a toxic relationship.
Mhm.
But anyway, she said, I couldn't imagine trying to escape now. She said, years ago I escaped my toxic relationship, I went to a divorce lawyer, and the first thing he said was, "Well, you need to squirrel away at least 6 months of living expenses for you and your kids."
Mhm.
Because he made a lot of money, the spouse made a lot of money, the abuser made a lot of money. Because as soon as you pull the trigger on doing something, he's going to cut everything off and he's going to come after you with lawyers, with psychologists. He's going to come after you with everything he can in the court system.
Mhm.
And he said, it will take time for me to get emergency funds for you, emergency
Mhm.
money. So you can't even think about leaving until you squirrel away at least he recommended 6 months of living expenses. Well, this particular victim, she had kids in private school. She
Mhm.
had kids that, taking, the normal life, taking, youth sports and are used to going on a summer vacation and stuff. So, that 6 months living expenses for her, that was a lot of money.
Mhm.
How
Mhm.
do you squirrel that away from a abuser who keeps track of your expenses and what you do with your money? Well, and I asked her, I said, "Well, how did you do it back in those days?" She said, "Well, it was a little bit easier back in those days. You could just go down, get a P.O. box down at the post office. You didn't have to prove proof of residence. It was easy back in. Now you have to prove all that. You
Yeah.
have to show your residency." Another thing she said, I went to the neighboring town, opened up a secret bank account, and she said back then they would just take a P.O. box as an address. Now they don't
Mhm.
do that. And she said every time I went to the grocery store, I'd get a 50 to $100 cash advance when I paid at the checkout counter. And back in those days, it just showed up as a purchase at that grocery store. Now it shows up as a cash advance.
Mhm.
So that's changed. So she said, I couldn't imagine trying to escape now because all the things I did to accumulate some money to escape my toxic relationship are not available now. And that's why, I was explaining to her Safe Haven Services on, the digital security box. She said, "Gosh, I couldn't imagine trying to escape without it nowadays." So
Mhm.
hopefully,
Mhm.
once we launch next month, we'll be able to offer a self help tool, and that's what we are, a self help tool. We're not a magic cure, but we are a self help tool to put in a toolbox.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. Especially, you know, when you go into domestic relations, which is extremely crooked, okay? And I think everybody knows that. But they'll ask you for all your financial information, but not the abusers.
Yes.
And a lot of these abusers that go into family court already have connections with the attorney's judge. There's so many connections, and that's why they're winning.
Mhm.
And I was sitting there wondering, well, how come I have to provide all my information and he doesn't? And we didn't even get the financial information until I had a win in superior court, and I told my attorney to tell the judge to we need the, W-2, but we actually needed more than that because he was squirreling money away,
Oh yeah,
and
the abusers usually do. Yeah, the research shows that.
it's
And
very go ahead.
oh no, not I was thinking about that therapist that kind of accused of the financial infidelity. And, I hate to say it, the first thing that ran in my mind was, "You've never experienced it, or you've not worked with it,
Mhm,
close enough, because you would know that that abuser's already squirreling away money, controlling the money, and our tool did not create financial infidelity. It's already happening. We're just offering a tool for the victim to accumulate money to escape. That's our hope, is just to try to enable that escape sooner, quicker, and safer. And nothing with the money, why it's so important in leaving that toxic relationship is that money also allows you to move away. Distance seems to be a wonderful thing in these
mhm,
toxic relationships. To be able not to live down the road or in the same town, move in another town. Just try to get that little bit of space so you can start your life back.
mhm. Now, people might say, "Is this cryptocurrency?"
Absolutely not. nothing to do with crypto. We operate, with Mastercard, Visa card, credit debit cards, and eventually, what we're going to offer in the next rollout is the ability for victims to put in cash money into their digital security box via Western Union or MoneyGram. And let me tell you why that's important. Okay, in the research, so many of these financial abuse victims, their abusers have ruined their credit. And what that means is most likely that victim, if they do escape, they cannot open up a bank account, a traditional checking account, because of that, terrible credit. So what we wanted to do was, with the digital security box, keep that cash option open because they could squirrel away money via cash through Western Union. You take your $20, through Western Union, put it in your digital security box. You accumulate some funds, you'll be able to do that in reverse. You can just take the money out via Western Union or MoneyGram with cash. And these victims, unfortunately, they're probably going to have to live their lives for a while pretty much on a cash basis due to their bad credit. And the abusers, a lot of times, you've heard this horrendous stories from victims, male and female, about waking up, escaping from their toxic relationship, finding out they got loans, finding out they got all this credit debit out there that they never even knew about.
Mhm,
Their abuser signed their name to stuff that they didn't know about. And one thing we found out in the research, the lawyers will tell you it'll probably cost you more in court trying to fight some of these loans and try to fight this debt that the abuser has put on the victim than it does just to pay it off. And most time the lawyers will say, well, you just have to live with it.
mhm,
And that is, that's heartbreaking to hear.
mhm. Yeah, it really is. Even, if someone's on a rocky marriage and they still feel they wanna stick it out, I think I would recommend the service because that's what I was doing. I was just sticking it out and, I was we'd have a period of 3 to 4 months of calmness and we were getting along, but then there would be a
Mhm.
a glitch and I sat back and I said, "Why didn't I divorce him going into 15 months of this marriage? Why didn't I?"
Yeah.
In fact the day before we got married, something was saying, "Don't do this. Just cancel it."
Mhm. Right.
But, you go through it because you think, "Oh, it's
They'll
just the."
change.
Yeah.
They'll
Yeah,
change.
right, and he said he would change, and he
Yeah.
tried working on it, and that's why I stayed in so long, but I should have been squirreling money awa and I thought about this, and it was so funny that I ran into you because I was, would like to have squirreled away money because even my parents were giving us money to fix up the
Mhm.
farmhouse that he now has, and again, okay, here's an example. We had co-parented very well for 10 years. So when we divorced, it was very amicable, and I even said, "Keep the house." In my mind, it had bad memories in it, and
Mhm.
we divorced amicably, and I bought my own farmhouse, and he even helped me fix up my farmhouse. So that's how good we were getting along, okay?
Mhm.
But then, unfortunately, a third party inserted herself in our co-parent relationship and with the kids, and I didn't know or realize she worked in a courthouse because I was the one who set them up on a date, okay? No good
Mhm.
deed goes unpunished, but
Mm.
now that's where, when my parents were giving me money, I should have said either don't give me the money, hold on to it for some okay, so if a parent wants to give, their children money, they should say, "Okay, what state is your marriage in?" I
Mhm.
think that's the first question a parent should ask, and be honest with them and say, "Well, it's kinda rocky, I don't know, about I don't know if I'm ready for divorce, I really don't know what to do yet." Then the parent should not give that kid any money to fix up a house or anything like that. That's my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. In some of the interviews we did, gosh, we heard time after time, this is male, female, I didn't make matter the victim,
Right.
was in the past, they had that aha moment, unfortunately. They knew this was not gonna get better. You know, they had that moment.
Mhm.
Now, and then all of them said, I wish I'd left 3 years ago. I wish I'd left 5 years ago," or whatever that time frame was. But they had that moment where of clarity that they just really realized that things were not gonna get better. So, so many said, "Gosh, just like you, I should have been squirreling away money." Now, one thing I just sent you on email, and I know the audience can't see it, was a video of "Everybody Loves Raymond."
Mhm.
And if you know the show, there's not a more beloved, person character on TV that loved her family more than Marie. And and I sent you the videos. I think it's season one, episode 9, Win, Lose or Draw, and she comes in there and hands Deborah some cash money to pay for something, and the story's kind of irrelevant. And Deborah says, "Well, does Frank know about this?" Frank being her husband. She said, "No, this is my money." And she explained how her dad, before she got married, put $200 into a safety deposit box and gave her the key and said, "If you ever want to leave, Frank, here's some money, in case I'm not
Aw,
around."
yeah.
Yeah, and she had kept it. And anyway, she was explaining to Deborah how important it was for her to have her own money. And Deborah, the character, makes the question, "Well, how much money do you have?" And she said, $46,000. It was quite a large amount of money. And she said, "Well, I don't want to leave Frank, but it just gives me peace of mind that that's mine, that I have something that's in my name that's not commingled." And she makes the quote to Deborah, and I thought this was quite relevant to. She said, "Money is freedom." And I can remember my great grandmother saying, "Money can't buy you happiness, but money can buy you freedom and options." And that's another thing about having your own money. You were talking about you wish you'd done that sooner. Well, like I say, the money might not buy you happiness, but it does buy you options, and it does might allow you freedoms in the future.
Mhm. Well, even we'll say kids that are older, we'll say 16, 7, 18-year-olds.
Hmm.
What if they are, being financially controlled by a
Hmm.
coercive, controlling parent, and, they want to squirrel money away, but yet they're not 21. Would they be
Yeah,
able
as
to?
long no, we would probably have. Now we don't have the regulations, but the card processors and all that have that 18-year-old to have a card in your name by yourself.
Mhm,
So they have the regulation. We can't take cards unless the card's in their name. So, and then for the card to
mhm.
be entirely in their name, it's 18. So it's
18.
yeah, it's a regulation via one of our vendors is the reason why we have that 18. But you make a point, and we'll give you another point on, and this is outside of family court, outside of domestic violence. Another group of people we hope to help with. We got a lady contacted us from outside the Houston area, and she works with a nonprofit that helps get sex workers off the street. Tries to work with them, give them, get them off that, the street and all that. And she was explaining to me that world that those sex workers live off what they call a pimp skim. They
Mhm,
live off that cat. They just skim money off the cash and stuff just to live. And that nonprofit worker says one of the biggest problems we have is lack of money storage for these young women or men, whoever it might be. And she said, "We really think your digital security boxes will really help those people because, for example, you can go into a library and free of charge log into their computer system, get on the internet, and you can set up a digital security box with us without even owning a computer or internet service or anything. And then those same like sex workers could go to a Western Union or MoneyGram and start squirreling away money for their escape and never own a phone, never own a computer. So you can still use our services just through the local public library and through the internet service and through the cash system of Western Union and MoneyGram. And so we're hoping we can help that subgroup too. There's another subgroup of people. The last election, there was some candidates that ran for president. They talked about the unbanked and the underbanked community. There's like 10 to 15 million people in this country that cannot get a bank account. And they're here legal, they're legal citizens, but due to bad credit or due to actions of abusers, they have bad credit
Mhm.
and can't get a bank account, or abusers might have written a bunch of bad checks in their name and they can't get a bank account. So our service can definitely be a safe, secure place for them to store cash. And one that nonprofit worker down in Houston who worked with a sex worker, she said, they'll try to squirrel away and hide cash,
Mhm.
but cash causes so much problems. First, it can be found by the abuser, or in that
Mhm.
case, the pimp, and then it's took from them, stolen. If they try to hide it with friends, well, you got problems there if the friend might take it or it gets stolen from them. And then also, cash invites a lot of crime. Having a stash of cash can be dangerous. So having the ability to put cash reserves into a digital security box adds safety to those people trying to get out of their situation.
Yeah, this is an excellent service. Even I just wish it would help kids in foster care to be able to squirrel money away because
Yeah.
they get out of they're just dumped off into the street with no,
Mhm.
monies, you know, and a lot of them end up in prison or worse.
Mhm.
So, I wish you guys can take it when they're, like, 16 and they could just dump some money and,
Oh, we'll work on it. Like I say, it's just the system we have to work with right now.
you're right.
It's kind of our limiting factor and stuff. Um, but I do feel for them, and we as kind of, I hate to say normal adults, but I don't know what normal is, but
Yeah, I
we
don't
as citizens, we kind of take for granted the ability to open up a bank account. And most
Mhm,
people don't even comprehend. Well, what do you mean I can't open up a bank account? No, there's and a lot of times these people are trapped not by stuff that they've done, just
mhm.
their circumstances have trapped them. And when you can't store money safely and securely, um, it can be dangerous. And the most of that system is trapped in a system of using prepaid debit cards to make
Mhm.
payments and to store money, and that costs them so much money. It keeps them in poverty. It can keep them very socially, economically disadvantaged, just because of circumstances that they did not create themselves. So
Oh,
we're just trying to offer a self-help tool, a tool in the toolbox, um, to help eliminate that situation of not having a safe, secure place to store money.
this is excellent. You know, um, how can people reach you with any questions?
Okay. Um, email. I'll put that out there. My personal email for the business is John at safehavenservices.co. Now it's not .com, it's .co. Our web page, which you can actually leave some information on our web page. It's up and going. The front pages are active. It's just that we're not live yet with operations, so the back
Mm,
pages aren't open, but the front pages are open. It's just www.safehavenservices.co. Again, it's co, not .com. Best way. LinkedIn will have the social media, and we'll put all that out there for everybody to look at too. And one thing we appreciate being on your podcast is this is a service that to get the word out has to be word of mouth, has to be podcasts like yours, has to be therapy, and it really has to be people that know what we're talking about. I was telling my partner Tom, I said, I've explained this service many, many times. And I wish I could do a better job of it, but you almost know there's that you can see a light bulb click when people realize what you're talking about and the need,
mhm.
and I mean, their eyes will get big and they'll go, "Gosh, we need this."
Oh, yes, yes. I think you
Uh,
explained it really well in my
okay,
opinion.
well, I hope so. I'm not going to say it's complicated. It's actually very, very simple, but it's kind of a complicated concept,
Mhm,
of why you would put money into a digital security box. And like I say, like therapists, the therapists that work in domestic violence Oh my goodness, and the certified divorce coaches, yourself, your personal experiences,
Mm.
they get it real quick.
Yeah.
Now, I've pitched some groups, wanting to give you, for example, like law groups and stuff, and you just see glaze on their eyes, and they're going, "Why would you need this?" And I'm glad
Uh,
that they don't know what we're talking about. I'm glad they've never personally experienced, financial abuse, and I'm happy for them. But if you don't understand the problem, you don't understand how we're offering, a tool to help the problem.
exactly. Now, with your email, John at Safe Haven Service, or is it services?
Services with S, yes,
Services, okay,
services.
.co, and it's www.safehavenservices.co.
.co, yes, CO. Mhm.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Ah, just, truly in our heart, we wish the need of our service wouldn't even exist in this world. Um, I wish family court was different. I wish, this problem didn't even exist. And I truly, hope that people realize what we're trying to offer is just trying to help people. Um, I belong to the Presbyterian faith. That's my chosen faith. We have a saying in our little country church, the best way to help yourself is by helping others.
Mhm,
And so we're just trying to help others. And one thing, even in doing the market research on this, the pre-marketing, I've been blessed to meet people like you. Zoom technology has been wonderful. I mean, I've met people across the country and even the victims, their stories have been, some of them horrendous, but I've been so fortunate to meet them and to hear their stories. And I want to leave on a good note. Okay, we've talked a lot about toxic relationship, talked about your personal. Um, here's another thing that a lot of therapists have said, and I don't, I'm not a psychologist, but for some reason they talked about sometimes two people can be in a toxic relationship, they get the heck out of that relationship, both parties goes on to a nice, calm rest of their lives. And for whatever reason, those two people particular just could not coexist together.
mhm.
So, there's hope out there for everybody. Even the abusers, I think sometimes is they can go on to a better life and be happier. And, sometimes these toxic relationships, they just need to end and
Mhm.
everybody can go on their way and hopefully live a better life.
Right, and it's better to end it before you bring children into it.
Yes. Oh, and before the situation can get maybe really violent,
Right,
because most of the research says, when the cop pulls up on this domestic violence call and there's been physical abuse, it didn't happen overnight.
right,
It stair stepped in
right.
the escalation. So we just hope people can, when they have that aha moment of going, hey, this is not going to get better. I need to start planning a way out of this. And we just hope we can offer a tool to help them plan better and leave safer and sooner.
Oh, this was excellent. I'm gonna have you back on 'cause
Well, I hope so. I hope we can come back on once we launch live,
right.
and hopefully next month. And I hope we can come back in a few months and I can say, hey, we're helping people in all 50 states.
Mhm.
I hope we really can. We're getting close to launch. Like I say, with my partner, when we start talking about 10,000 lines of computer code and everything, it's he's put some work into it. I mean, it's to create something new and technology didn't happen overnight.
Mhm.
And but we look forward to that day we can get that out there and help people. And I hope, like I say, hope we can come back on and talk
Oh,
about helping
yes.
more people. We got some more services we have in the back of our mind to offer, some different segments, some other niche groups
Mhm.
of people. But now our primary purpose is to help those domestic and financial abuse victims, and that's our soul. That's our purpose in creating safe haven services.
Excellent. I'm so glad. I'm gonna have you back on, so, don't jump
Thank you.
off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here in the future with John Peace and other exciting guests, and I'll have you back on. John, thank you so very much.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you.